Imagine standing on a wooden dock in the 1930s. The water's calm until a thunderous roar breaks the silence. But it's not just a boat. It's a warplane engine strapped to a handcrafted hull, screaming across the river at over 100 miles an hour. These machines weren't built for leisure. They were built to conquer, to break records, to terrify the competition. And what you don't know is behind every one there was a story of obsession, danger, and raw horsepower. These are the largest engines ever put in old boats, and the dramas behind them are absolutely insane. The Packard 4M2500 was a 24-litre V12 engine originally designed for military boats, like PTs and crash boats during World War II. But in 1932, Garwood got there first. He installed 4 of these engines into Miss America X, his 38-foot mahogany racer built to crush world water speed records. Each engine produced between 1,500 and 1,850 horsepower, depending on boat and tuning. That meant a total of over 6,000 horsepower, unheard of in the wooden boat era. At full throttle, Miss America X weighed over 8 tons and still managed to average 124.86 miles per hour across the St. Clair River, setting a world record. The engines were supercharged and ran on aviation fuel with dual ignition and complex water-cooled exhausts. They weren't just fast, they were brutally engineered. The torque output required custom gear reduction boxes and reinforced drive shafts to keep the boat from tearing itself apart. Packard's V12s later became the backbone of Allied patrol boats during World War II, but they made marine history first in a civilian race boat. Miss America X wasn't just a boat. It was a floating test bed for raw combustion power. No other wooden race boat before or since matched its absurd combination of weight, speed, and horsepower. And that's just number 1. If you think this is crazy, trust me, the biggest shock is still ahead. So stay with me, because the last engine on this list will change the way you think about boats forever, and subscribe to this channel while you're at it. The Miller V16 was one of the most extreme marine engines ever created, custom built in 1931 specifically for Garwood's racing boat Miss America 8. Designed by legendary race car builder Harry Miller and engineered by Leo Goosen, this 16-cylinder powerhouse displaced 1,113.5 cubic inches, or about 18.25 liters. It featured twin overhead camshafts, 4 valves per cylinder, and twin superchargers. Each engine produced an estimated 1,800 horsepower at 6,000 RPM, an astronomical figure for the time. Garwood had 2 of these V16s installed in Miss America 8, giving the boat a potential output of 3,600 horsepower. The goal was to reclaim the Harmsworth Trophy from British racer Kay Don, who had been dominating with his Napier-powered Miss England too. During its record runs on the St. Clair River in October 1931, Miss America 8 reached speeds of over 104 miles per hour, pushing the limits of what wooden hulls and propeller design could handle. Although the Miller engines were innovative, they were also experimental. Mechanical issues plagued their reliability, and after several races, they were pulled out and replaced with more proven Packard V12s. Still, the Miller V16 remains a rare and daring example of pre-war American engineering built for one purpose: outright, uncompromising speed. The Liberty L12 was one of the most widely produced and historically significant V12 engines of the early 20th century. Designed in 1917 by Jesse G. Vincent of Packard and Albert Hall, it was an all-aluminium, 27-litre aircraft engine developed for the US military during World War I. Producing around 400 horsepower at 1,800 RPM, it was reliable, compact for its size, and easy to mass produce. Over 20,000 units were built by companies like Packard, Ford, and Lincoln. After the war, thousands of surplus Liberty engines became available for civilian use. And naturally, some of them ended up in high-speed boats. Garwood used twin Liberty L12s in Miss America 5, which won the Harmsworth Trophy in 1927 and 1928. The engines were chosen for their proven endurance and torque, providing enough power to push the massive wooden craft over 90 miles per hour, an incredible feat at the time. The Liberty L12's transition from fighter planes to race boats showed just how versatile the design was. It wasn't flashy like the supercharged Millers or Griffins that followed, but it delivered consistent performance in grueling race conditions. In many ways, it laid the foundation for the aircraft-to-marine engine trend that dominated boat racing for decades. The Curtiss D12 was one of the earliest successful liquid-cooled aluminium block V12 engines in aviation, and it quickly found a second life in boat racing. Developed by the Curtiss Aeroplane and Motor Company in 1922, the D12 displaced 1,145 cubic inches, 18.8 liters, and produced 445 horsepower at 2,300 RPM. With an all-aluminium construction, overhead camshaft, and relatively light weight for its class, around 678 pounds, the engine became a favorite for both military aircraft and competitive racing boats. Garwood used twin Curtiss D12s in his early Miss America boats, specifically Miss America 1, 2, and 3. These boats were dominant in the early 1920s, with Miss America 2 winning the 1921 Harmsworth Trophy at speeds over 70 miles per hour. The combination of lightweight hulls and powerful aircraft engines gave American teams a serious edge over their competitors, especially in straight-line sprints. The D12's influence extended far beyond boat racing. Its success as a compact, high-output engine led other manufacturers, like Rolls-Royce and Packard, to adopt similar architecture in their future V12 designs. Though overshadowed in later years by larger and more powerful engines, the Curtiss D12 laid the groundwork for decades of racing innovation, proving that aviation technology belonged in the water. The Rolls-Royce Merlin is a 27-liter liquid-cooled V12 engine developed in the late 1930s, famed for powering iconic aircraft like the Spitfire and P-51 Mustang. In marine conversions, Merlin engines were subtly modified with marine-grade cooling systems and gearboxes, producing between 1,100 to 1,600 horsepower, depending on tuning and configuration. Although rare, a few custom hydroplanes and exhibition speedboats incorporated Merlin units after World War II, using their high power-to-weight ratio to push wooden and aluminium hulls into triple-digit speeds. One documented example appears in European hydroplane racing exhibitions and private builds during the 1950s and early 1960s, where iconic Merlin's sound and charisma were embraced by engine collectors and boat enthusiasts. In these installations, the Merlin's compact size and high specific output made it a strong candidate for unit construction in racing craft. Archival evidence confirms at least one British gentleman racer who transplanted a Merlin into a 30-foot wooden hull, wiring it to marine transmission systems and using it in lake speed trials. Although these Merlin-powered boats never reached mainstream competition, the engine's fame, performance, and mechanical pedigree make its marine use historically significant. The Merlin's appearance in vintage racing circles symbolizes the crossover transformation of aircraft power plants into Leviathan boat engines in the mid-20th century. Loving this so far? Tap subscribe and stay with me, because the last engine on this list is the one no one believes actually existed. And yes, it's real. The Rolls-Royce Griffin was the larger, more powerful successor to the Merlin V12, developed in the late 1930s and entering service in 1940. The Griffin was a 36.7-liter, 60-degree V12 aircraft engine, capable of producing between 1,730 and 2,420 horsepower, depending on the variant. It featured a two-stage, two-speed supercharger and was used in later models of the Spitfire and the Firefly naval aircraft. After World War II, surplus Griffin engines became available and were embraced by unlimited hydroplane racers in North America during the 1950s through the 1970s. Boats like Miss Budweiser, Miss Madison, and Notre Dame adopted the Griffin due to its higher output compared to the Merlin. In many cases, these engines were marine-modified, with custom gearboxes and cooling systems. A Griffin-powered hydroplane was heavier than a Merlin-equipped boat, but the horsepower advantage was undeniable. The Griffin's broad torque curve and brutal top-end thrust made it a favorite for straight-line acceleration. Though eventually phased out in favor of turbine engines in the 1980s, the Griffin-powered era marked the final chapter of piston engine dominance in boat racing. These engines pushed wooden and aluminium hulls past 180 miles per hour, setting records and thrilling crowds with their deep roaring tone and violent speed. The Allison V1710 was a 27-liter liquid-cooled V12 engine developed in the United States during the 1930s. It powered aircraft such as the P-38 Lightning, P-40 Warhawk, and the early P-51 Mustang, producing between 1,000 and 1,600 horsepower depending on the model. The V1710 became the go-to engine for many post-war boat racers who wanted aircraft-grade power without the complexity or cost of a Rolls-Royce Merlin or Griffin. In unlimited hydroplane racing, the V1710 gained traction in the 1950s as surplus units flooded the market. Boats like Miss Thriftway and Miss Spokane used Allison engines to great success, often running them with minimal modifications. While slightly heavier than the Merlin, the V1710's simpler supercharging system made it easier to maintain and tune for marine applications. Builders praised its reliability, availability, and strong low-end torque. The Allison-powered hydroplanes routinely exceeded 160 miles per hour in competition, and some even touched 180 miles per hour on the straights. The engine's adaptability allowed it to be used in both stepped hydroplanes and newer pickle fork designs. As turbines began to take over in the 1980s, the V1710's reign slowly ended, but its legacy as a reliable, race-proven American V12 remains intact in the history of marine performance. The Chrysler A57 Multibank was one of the most unusual engines ever built. Developed during World War II to power M4A4 Sherman tanks, it consisted of 5 inline-6 Chrysler car engines, arranged around a central crankshaft. The result was a 30-cylinder gasoline engine displacing 1,253 cubic inches, 20.5 liters, and producing around 370 horsepower at 2,400 RPM. While not efficient or compact, it met urgent wartime production needs by using existing components. After the war, surplus A55 multibank engines were occasionally repurposed by hobbyists and custom builders for marine applications. Some of these found their way into landing craft or experimental powerboats due to their massive torque and availability. Though rare and never used in professional racing, a few builders in the 1950s and 1960s mounted them in military surplus hulls or home-built crafts as a curiosity or performance experiment. The engine weighed over 2,300 pounds and required complex maintenance due to its 5 carburetors, 5 distributors, and 5 sets of valve gear. Still, it earned a reputation as a workhorse in tank service and a mechanical oddity in civilian use. While its marine presence was limited, the A57 remains one of the largest and most bizarre engines ever installed in a boat hull. More of a feat of packaging than outright speed. The Graymarine 671 was a marinized version of the Detroit Diesel 671, a 2-stroke inline-6 engine, originally designed by General Motors in the late 1930s. Displacing 426 cubic inches, 7 liters, the engine was known for its rugged reliability, simple design, and incredible torque. When converted by Graymarine for nautical use, it became the beating heart of thousands of landing craft, patrol boats and tugs during World War II and beyond. In its marine configuration, the Graymarine 671 typically produced between 165 and 230 horsepower, depending on gear ratio and application. It featured a root-style blower for scavenging, water-cooled exhaust manifolds, and heavy-duty marine gearboxes. It wasn't flashy or fast, but it could run for thousands of hours without failure, even in salt water, sand, and combat zones. The US Navy depended on this engine to power LCVPs, Higgin boats, crash boats, and subchasers throughout the Pacific and Atlantic campaigns. After the war, surplus Graymarine 671s found new life in fishing trawlers, workboats, and even converted cruisers. Marine engineers respected it for one key reason: it just wouldn't quit. While it didn't power race boats like the Packard or Allison V12s, the Graymarine 671 earned its place in boating history through pure durability and scale. It was the unsung diesel backbone of mid-century marine engineering. The Lycoming T-53 is a turboshaft engine originally designed in the 1950s to power military helicopters such as the Bell UH-1 Huey. It features a single-stage centrifugal compressor and a free turbine design, producing between 1,100 and 1,800 horsepower depending on the variant. Lightweight and compact compared to piston engines of equivalent power, the T-53 quickly found a second life in high-speed marine racing, particularly in the unlimited hydroplane class. During the 1960s and 1970s, as surplus military engines became available, boat builders began replacing massive V12 aircraft engines with the smaller, more efficient T-53. Its adoption allowed for greater speed, better reliability, and fewer mechanical failures under race conditions. Boats such as Atlas Van Lines and Miss Budweiser began dominating with turbine setups, and by the 1980s, the T-53 had nearly replaced all piston engines in competitive hydroplane racing. The engine's turboshaft design offered smooth, instant torque with fewer moving parts than V-type piston engines. While technically not from the Garwood era, its role in transforming boat racing is undeniable. The Lycoming T-53 represents the bridge between old-school brute force and modern efficiency, marking the end of the piston era and the dawn of turbine supremacy on water. The Liberty L12 was a 27-liter liquid-cooled V12 aircraft engine developed in 1917 by Jesse G. Vincent of Packard and Albert J. Hall. Built for World War I air service, it quickly became one of the most significant American engines of the early 20th century. Producing 400 horsepower at 1,800 RPM, the Liberty was designed for simplicity, mass production, and reliability. Over 20,000 units were built by manufacturers like Packard, Ford, and Lincoln. Following the war, large numbers of surplus Liberty engines became available, and many were repurposed for marine use. One of the most notable adopters was Garfield Garwood, who used twin Liberty L12s in his Miss America racing boats throughout the 1920s. With these engines, Garwood won multiple Harmsworth trophies and set several world water speed records, breaking 70 miles per hour in Miss America 2 in 1921 and over 90 miles per hour in Miss America 5 by 1928. The Liberty's simple yet robust design made it ideal for early speedboat racing. With a single overhead cam, 2 valves per cylinder, and direct drive configurations, it delivered dependable thrust on the water. Though eventually surpassed by more advanced power plants, the Liberty L12 was the first great American V12 to dominate both air and water, an icon of interwar innovation and engineering. These engines weren't just power plants. They were legends carved in iron, roaring across water at a time when nobody thought it was possible. From war-born V12s to one-off mechanical monsters, they redefined what boats could be. If you made it this far, you're officially one of us. Hooked on the wild, the forgotten, and the absurdly powerful. Drop a comment with your favorite engine, hit like if your jaw dropped at least once, and don't forget to subscribe for more insane stories from the golden age of horsepower.